Hey guys, in this tutorial we're going to explore the different types of lighting available in the Indigo plugin for Iclone. And we're going to start off with this project I have loaded right here. It's just a simple speed tree, your typical plain and angel statue, or the Virgin Mary statue, just loaded in here. What we're going to do is we're going to try to simulate sunset via all three different types of lighting in Indigo. So you can see I'm going to give myself maybe a render like this or something. Let's press Control G and turn off that grid for now. And what I have here is just that statue, and we're going to try and recreate the illusion of sunset with our Indigo renderers. So let's go over to the Indigo tab. If you don't have that, again, you can just go over here to the Indigo Settings. I always like to dock it over here on the right-hand side. And you can see the area we're going to be dealing with exclusively in this tutorial is this Indigo environment area. And we have three options for lighting. We have Iclone Lights only, we have background color, and we have Indigo Sun and Sky. And we also have the Iclone Lights listed below here, so we're going to deal with those as well. Let's go into our scene and take a look at the Iclone Lights we currently have in our scene. These are just the default lights that come with your scene when you load a default project. If I deactivate this rim light, you can see the result there. If I deactivate my key light, we have absolutely nothing in the scene, and so on and so forth. So I'm actually going to leave my rim light off for now. We're only going to be using the key light in this scenario. So let's start off by trying to simulate the the sunset with Iclone Lights only. So I'm going to hold the / key down, and I'm going to rotate my gizmo to kind of have the light coming from over here. If you take a look at the image plane below the statue, you can see it's just lighting up as I get over that point about there. We're going to keep it there. And let's take a quick look at what this render looks like before we move on. I'm just going to go ahead and render this in Indigo right away. And this will load up. And you can see we have in fact, it's a fairly creepy looking scene. Almost looks like there's headlights on this statue, and it's midnight. And you know, this is kind of what we're looking at right now. This looks nowhere near close to what we want as a sunset render. So let's go ahead and close this down. And let's change the color of the lighting a little bit first. So we have our key light right here. And if we go to our modify panel, we can also change the light over here, the light color over here. But we can also do it over here as well. If we go to the color swatch right here, we can just make it maybe a bit more of an orangish color. It's kind of picky between the yellow and the red there. Maybe do something like that. It looks like a more of a sunsetish type color. I always end up making things too brown. So let's try that. Ooh, there we go. That looks like a nice orangish, bright orange there. Let's go ahead and press OK. And you can see there we get that nice, sunset type glow. Now, if we render this, you'll see that this will just load up, and it'll have a bit more of an orangish glow, but it still looks like it's midnight. So what we need to do is we need to actually add in a sky map. Now, to add in a sky map, we can go to our Content tab here and go into the sky. And there's a number of different sky maps here that come embedded with Iclone. I like to use this Sky 02 one, so I'm just going to double click that and load it in. And you can see the resolution is really not that good. If we're doing a close-in shot like this, we normally want to, I'm holding the Shift and Alt key and zooming out just to show you how big this current sky map is. And we keep going and going and going. It's almost like we're taking off on an airplane here, and we're leaving the tree behind. And there it goes. So now you can start to see this huge sky map, and this is kind of how big we're dealing with right here. And this is your world, basically, when you add in a sky map. Just a huge sphere that takes over, covers your entire world, and displays this sky map on the outside. So let's go over to our Scene tab again, click on our Virgin statue, and just press F. And that's a nice convenient way to focus back in on the statue instead of zooming back in. So let's try modifying this sky map. I'm going to open it up in the Scene Manager here. And let's try and reducing the scale to something like 10, very small. And you can see there we get a nicely reduced scale. And if I zoom out, you can notice that it's a lot smaller than it used to be. So let's go ahead and maybe try and increase that height, I think, maybe to something like 180. There we go. We get that nice sunlight over here. So that's going to be, we're going to try and simulate the sun coming from that direction over there to our statue's right-hand side, our left-hand side. So I think we're going to leave the values for the sky at that, and maybe even try and make these a little bit little bit darker. The orange a little bit darker, more like a, there we go. I think that should be okay. So let's try and simulate our scene from this perspective right here. And I have the statue as kind of a white reference, and the tree is kind of a natural color reference in this scene here as well. So let's try and render this and see how it looks from this angle with the sky map. So you can see there we're getting a much better result. We're getting a fairly a color that's fairly consistent with the background, and we have the nice reflection, kind of an orange tinge on the reflection on the statue, and you can even notice the orange tinge on the leaves here as well. It looks very natural, and the slightly warm colors along the trunk. So this is a fairly good representation of you know, what a sunset would look like with only a single Iclone light. We've only used that single directional light there. So let's just go ahead and we can actually just keep that going for now while we prepare our next one. And what I'm going to do now is try to simulate the same thing with the background color. So let's go ahead to Indigo again and select background color. Now to set your background color, you have to go into your preferences, Control-Shift-P, project settings, and we have a background color option right here. Let's choose something similar to what we had before. I think this is a fairly similar color to what we have in the background there. And we'll just press OK and have that as our background color. And then of course we need to delete our sky if we're going to have a background. So you can see it's fairly similar. And let's try and do the same thing. Background color is not going to be as good as the other ones because obviously we don't have a sky map to complete the illusion. But let's try background color, and let's try it without the directional light active, and just go ahead and render that in Indigo. So what the background color will do is it'll essentially kind of create a kind of environmental ambient light here. You can see it almost looks like we're in a fire planet or a post-apocalyptic world where the entire sky is just full of fire and everything is just going crazy here, and it's a very orange scene, very orange indeed. If we go back to our other Indigo render, you can see that's probably a bit more of an accurate representation is in regards to what we're looking for here. So this one, not really loving that one. So let's go ahead and stop that. You can see the background color will normally be used for ambient lighting, but if you use it in combination, let's go back to Iclone here. Use it in combination with the lighting here, the directional light. Let's take a look at what that'll look like here. Let's try maybe from a slightly different angle and go ahead and render that. So if we use this in combination with the directional light, we can get a fairly decent result. And I mean, you can always composite your background later as well. So this one we're getting much more of a reflection on the one side anyways. The background color is still a little bit strong. I mean, we can even just, if I make this color a little bit darker, let's go ahead and try that actually. Make the color a little bit darker. And you pull it down to almost a brownish color. And we should be able to see the light a bit more in our Indigo render. You can see I'm just quickly, whipping out these renders, and this is this is just a laptop that I'm using here, Intel i5. There we go. So that looks a bit more easy to handle on the eyes, even though the background color still is a little bit bright. But the scene is very interesting to look at. But we're not going to spend too much time using the background color. I want to focus a little bit more on the Indigo Sun and Sky. So with the Indigo Sun and Sky, let's go ahead and choose this. I'm going to deactivate all the Iclone lights because Indigo Sun and Sky is pretty much independent of any lighting that you would use in Iclone. You can actually combine them too, but they're maybe a little bit independent. I would recommend probably not doing that if you want to, the natural result. Let's move this tree a little bit further back here. And what I want to do now is I want to create the illusion of sunset, but naturally I want it to be from that one direction there. And if I have my sky map still in, let's actually just load that sky map up and see what happens. I'm going to load that sky map up one more time, and we'll go to the properties here. We'll go to, check it in the scene manager here, and scale that down to 10 again. Let's use the same values as we had before. I think it was 180, I think. Yeah, okay, that looks good. And let's take a look at what will happen if I have my sky map in. So first of all, we need to actually determine the direction that the light is coming from. So if we look at our world axis, this is the x-axis, the red one, the green one is the y-axis, the blue is the z. So essentially we want it to come from a negative x and positive y, between negative x and positive y. So let's go change our direction down to about here, and it's going to be coming from essentially that direction right there. And let's bring the angle way down to something like 8, 7 even, 5, something like that. That'll be good enough. And let's give ourselves a nice looking angle to have this render from. Let's try doing something a bit more artistic. All right, so let's see if we can get that, you know, the light over there in the render there as well, and see what this kind of looks like. I think something like that would be nice. Let's go ahead and render this, and wait for RT to load up. Alright, so you can see basically we have no lighting in our scene. We just have the background sky map. That's the only source of light in this entire scene. And this is because when you're using the Indigo Sun and Sky preset, you can't have a sky map because the Indigo Sun and Sky is not going to shine through your sky map. So let's go ahead and delete our sky map right now. And we can go back to whatever background color we have. Our Iclone Light is still deactivated, so let's go ahead and try and render Indigo Sun and Sky now at these settings right here. So now when Indigo launches up, we should see a bit more light going on there, as we do right now. And you can see we had a fairly nice result. We have a nice, you know, distant light shining on our statue right here. Very subtle, but you can it's definitely noticeable, and we have it on the tree as well. So we get that nice, very subtle lighting effect on our character, or rather on our statue right there. Just the nice slivers of light along the side, and the light is, you know, slowly developing. Let's try here at a different angle. I'm going to go ahead and stop that, and I'm just going to go maybe to about here. And I think we kind of cut off the angle on the last render. Let's go ahead and try this one. And let's make that angle even lower. Let's turn it down to something like 4 and try and render that one and see what it looks like here. Alright, so there you can see the kind of lighting that we were missing in that earlier render just because of our angle. And I think that's fairly nice. We can even maybe change the angle a little bit to make it a little bit closer, or a little bit more on the front of the statue so we can see it a bit more. So let's try that. So what we need to do is we need to make it a little bit closer to the negative x and a little bit further away from the positive y. So maybe about there would be good. Let's give that a shot. We should have some more lighting on the front of the statue in this case. Let's go ahead and render that. Rendering. And there you go. What we see here is more of the result I was going for. The angles were a bit off at first, but that's how you can, you know, adjust your angles. And now you see that even though we have the sun very close to the horizon, the lighting is still it's fairly bright still. You can see it tinged a little bit yellow. But what you can do is, if you want to adjust this, if you want to, you know, refine the angle of your sun, you can actually go in here into your scene window right here and check out your background settings. And you can see currently we have the environment type as sun and sky. The azimuth is set at 156. That's where the light is in the sky. For example, if I change this to something like 90, you can see that actually the sun is coming from behind the statue. And if I went from 180, which is opposite of 90, you can see the sun's pretty much coming from the front of the statue. So I think we were at, I don't know, something like 150 before. Totally forgot the value. That looks okay. I think you can see it has to re-render every time we do this again. So I think we'll keep it at this, maybe, I think 160 will do. 160 is kind of the look we're going for here. There we go. We get a bit more of light reflection on the front of the statue there. Now the zenith is kind of how close the lighting is to the horizon. So right now it's at 86. If I swap this for something like 89, you can see it's really close to the horizon. We start to get that nice glow there. Very subtle glow on the statue. 88 is normally a good value. Lucky number 88. If you're trying to create sunsets, you get a nice look right here. and we can zoom out and you can see that we get that nice sunset simulation right there, and the colors on the branches and everything really simulate that moment just before dusk, where the sun is about to go down. Let's go to our other render and see how this one's doing. You can see this one with the Iclone lighting, fairly decent. It's not bad for a single directional light. I get some nice rendering, especially on those leaves right there. And this one's been rendering for about 10 minutes on my little laptop here. So we get a nice quick render there. However, if I go back to this one, I kind of like the look of this one. You can see it's very, very subtle. One thing that Indigo is really good at is the very subtle lighting. Stuff that you can't really achieve too much success in programs like Iclone with our real-time render engine. But you get some really nice subtle reflections on here, and the lighting is very, very nicely done, I think. So that's kind of the results that you can get with the Sun and Sky setting in Indigo. And if I want to have this at midday, for example, we can put this Zenith at something like 20, and that'll just totally ruin our render here that we were just putting up. But now we have a nice bright sunny day, and the trees are singing happily, and casting some shadows onto our Virgin Mary here. And we can even change that azimuth to something like 120. It's kind of cool to mess around with these values. And there you go. That's kind of from behind. And we get that those I wanted to get those shadows from the leaves casting on the character here, or on the statue rather. And the longer you let this render, the more kind of subtle lighting you'll see appear in your scene. So if we go back to this one right here, again, this is our Iclone render with a single directional light. This is a nice Indigo render that we get in about 30 seconds on my laptop. So again, this is let's go back to Iclone here. I just want to review the types of lighting. I showed you the Iclone light only with a single light. You can also use if you use Iclone lights only, you can also use point lights and directional lights. We'll talk more about that in a separate tutorial. The background color one really depends on what you're looking for. And the Indigo lighting environment is very well refined for use with Indigo. So if you're doing outdoor scenes in particular, I would really recommend using this. You can also use this in combination with other lighting as well. If I go to, let's try one more render here. I'm going to use the Indigo Sun and Sky setting, and I'm going to go ahead and add a point light. I'm going to go create light, and I'm going to add a point light. And that's going to add right to the middle of my scene there. And let's just bring it forward a little bit. So we're going to try and light up the statue right here. I'm going to try and create a creepy kind of light coming from the ground. Actually, in this case, a spotlight might even be better if we're pointing at a certain direction. Point lights normally take a little bit longer to render. So let's go ahead and create a light and a spotlight right here. And let's bring that forward a little bit. There we go. And we want to rotate it upwards to face. I'm using the W and E hotkeys if you're not familiar with those. And if you don't have your gizmo, press Control Q. So let's kind of create that nice looking, creepy look, something like that. Like like there's a big light, or rather a spotlight shining up on the statue right here. Maybe we need to bring it back a little bit further. Something like that would be kind of cool. So if we have this result going on here, and we use the Indigo Sun and Sky, use a very small angle, let's go ahead and try and render this and see what happens. Notice we have the spotlight active in our scene, and let's go ahead and give this a shot. So you can see when this loads up here, we'll get a nice, almost like creepy looking spotlight shining on the statue, almost like it's a graveyard at dusk, and we got that bright spotlight shining up, and we get the very, very distant light coming from the sunset over there in the distance. If we wanted that to be a bit higher, we can go and swap that as well. Let's up that zenith to about maybe 83 or something. There we go. It's a bit more brightness in our scene there. So that's pretty much it. That's the three types of lighting that are available with the Indigo plugin for Iclone. You can mess around with them. If you're using an outdoor scene, I'd really recommend experimenting with the Indigo Sun and Sky render. It's streamlined and made for use with Indigo renderer. So try that out. And you can also use different Iclone lights in combination with any of these lights as well. So experiment with your lighting in your scenes, and it's a lot of fun. And hopefully you can get some really good renders out there in the future. So thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for all of our other tutorials on the Indigo plugin for Iclone.